Everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. And with me on Cracking the Comms comes I can't even see the name of my show, Cracking the Comms Code, are Brendan, Jacqueline, and Noah. And we're going to tackle how PR professionals can come out of the shadows to build our own brands. We're all experts at building up the CEO, the client, the founder-led company. But what about ourselves, especially in the modern era when jobs are hard to find and recruiters are really using LinkedIn as a way to decide if the candidate is worthy of being promoted and elevated to their clients? So before we dive into and everyone introduces themselves, please make sure that you bring your questions and your experiences and your LinkedIn best practices to the comments so we can sure have a lively conversation today. Brennan, Jacqueline, and Noah, please, if you could just briefly introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Brandon Watts, Director of PR and Comms at Storyblok. I think this is the third one of these we've done, Dustin. So always a great conversation. Happy to see two new faces who I know through LinkedIn, have never spoke to. So this will be very illuminating for me. I'm excited about it. But yeah, a lot's changed in the past 3 months since we've done this. So happy to catch up and get going.
I'm Jacqueline Keidel Martinez. I'm the President and Chief Communications Officer at Digital HQ. I believe that executives should be influential when mainly they're invisible. So I'm excited to be here to chat about how you can make yourself more influential on LinkedIn.
And I'm Noah Greenberg, CEO at Stacker. We help brands turn their owned media into earned media. And I have been building a personal presence on LinkedIn the past 2 years and change. And it's been transformational. So excited to chat about what we've learned.
So again, today we're going to talk about how PR professionals and communications professionals more broadly can come out of the shadows. And I want to anchor the conversation with something Brendan has said the last two times we've had this conversation, March and July of last year, about the way things have changed for his point of view as a PR professional, but also as someone who hires other people in the world of PR.
Yeah, it's happy to get it kicked off there. So yeah, I mean, I'm famously known for saying that I would never use social media. I'd use it for brands and the companies execs I represented, but just wasn't into it as a PR pro. I thought it was distracting. It wouldn't help me to kind of keep the focus. Obviously, things have changed. Now it's essential to everything I believe in for this profession and where I spend my time. And it is incredible. I mean, I'm not as elite as some of these folks that we've talked to before, including the two we have today. But even just a post a day, what that can do to transform your life and business and opportunities and everything is just unbelievable. And I'm actually about to start hiring a couple more folks, and we've had this discussion before, Dustin, about how I said, I wouldn't hire someone who's not putting
Right.
forth a good presence on LinkedIn, whereas before I wasn't even doing that. But now I'm just about to start hiring two more people, and I just put a teaser out there a couple days ago. And because I've built a personal brand over the past year and a half, people that have been following along are now suddenly racing and saying, how do we work together? And so I'm building a pipeline of people I already know that I've seen in comments. And just that's one anecdote just to prove the value of this. But it builds up to the reason I've done all of this, where not only is it fun, entertaining, and educational, but when you need it, when you need a network, it's unbelievable. And yeah, happy to hear Noah's and Jacqueline's experience about this. And that's kind of my transformational attitude. I didn't come into this excited to start it, but through reps, daily posts, daily interactions, now I just think it is the widest source of knowledge we could ever have as business professionals. So happy to hear what they've learned.
Jacqueline, Noah?
No, I kicked off
Uh,
with my introduction first. Yeah, I would love to hear from you.
What Brandon said resonated with me in that before I started posting on LinkedIn about 2 years ago, I had not posted on social media probably since college. And, it was a very different experience then and a very different goal. And for me, it was the impetus was realizing that when we got on the phone with potential customers, they said, "Wow, I've been looking for something like this," but just no one had heard of us. And realizing that all of our potential customers were on LinkedIn every day, and that any piece of earned media would be ephemeral, but that you can post right in front of your customers every day on LinkedIn. And that really was kind of the kickoff for this journey. We can get into some of the tactics that, I've learned over the past 24 months, but to go toward the end of that journey, again, to, some of what Brandon said that really resonated with me and that I've seen is just, I think in 2026, either, Brandon is saying he is consciously not going to hire someone, not going to work with someone that is not posting on LinkedIn. I think there's also a ton of that happening unconsciously, where just as people
Yeah.
are building personal brands on LinkedIn and
Mhm.
building a presence on LinkedIn, that when someone is picking about, which agency am I going to work with, which contractor am I going to work with, that the people posting on LinkedIn just have such a leg up because they've built up their personal brand that if you're not doing it, you are just at kind of at a default disadvantage. And so there's people like Brandon that are kind of consciously going out there and saying, I'm not going to hire someone that's not doing this. But I think for every person like that, there's 100 people that don't realize that they're being influenced by who they see on LinkedIn every day in terms of who they're
Mhm.
more likely to pick as their PR person, their agency, their, et cetera. And so, I'm seeing that in real time. And yeah, can get into the topics later. Over to you, Jacqueline.
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring us home with a personal anecdote actually from one of my own clients, right? His work is very closely related to the public sector, and he is consistently talking about not only his work, but also some of his personality on his LinkedIn, right? So we worked with him to recommend a book that he was reading, right? That was had a lot of overlap with the public sector. And when he walked into the governor's office to meet with the governor's chief of staff for the first time, that chief of staff said, "Oh, hey, John, be right back. Give me 1 second." That chief of staff came back, held up the book, and said, "I grabbed the book you recommended on LinkedIn." This was the first time he was meeting with my client, right? And this client came back to me and said, "Jacqueline, I'm walking into rooms where my reputation precedes me, right? We are warming these rooms for our clients. Why wouldn't we be warming these rooms for ourselves, right? People want to like the individuals they're working with. Of course, our skill, our expertise matters, but what it often boils down to is people genuinely liking the folks that they hire and work with. LinkedIn is a wonderful resource to not only build your expertise, but also to help people understand that they're going to love you as a person. And that is why I love this platform.
And I want to dial in a little bit with another anecdote. This is about me and my company. Until 2 years ago, when we did a big shift, we stopped going after that traditional founder-led, investor-led business with the largely marketing and branding ignorant leadership to working directly with communications people. So agencies, consultants, in-house teams, where the earned media gap support. But in order to make that shift, I mean, I thought LinkedIn was a billboard. So I had like 15 posts that I just recycled on a schedule. And it did get us a couple of clients. There's some significant clients. But when I started diving into it and I started seeing people getting 800 engagements, and how do we even compete with this? These people are just doing amazing, forward-looking content. Stuff like what Noah's doing all the time about, looking at the algorithm. Or Brandon, didn't you speak at an IBM or something event last year on AI because of what you've been saying on LinkedIn? I was like, how do we stand out? And what I realized is 20% of LinkedIn, first, it's not a billboard like it used to be, if you want to actually use it to build your brand. And second, you don't have to say anything extraordinary because just saying the fundamentals and driving people down that journey shows how you think. That shows how your brain works. And that's a lot of what people I think are looking for on LinkedIn. So a lot of people get scared and they go, again, like I was, I don't have much to offer. So we actually hired a consultant, spent quite a bit of money on it, and between her and our sales manager, who's a lot of her work is just managing my I am the face and the voice on LinkedIn, but all the scheduling happens behind the scenes. She cuts clips from the show, does all that work. We've actually generated at least a 12x return on LinkedIn in the last 18 months. And it's because we're showing up 6 days a week and not just posting, we're commenting, having the show, we're meeting people and going for Zoom calls. It's this whole fundamental stream of tactics that starts with something that I was unfamiliar with, that you have to come out of the shadow. I'm a naturally self-promoter. I got into PR because people hired me to do what I was doing for myself. And what I've learned in the last 2 years since I've focused on the communications industry, most PR people have never self-promoted. They've never thought it was important, and now they don't know what to do. And my argument is, and this is the post I put up yesterday for the show, you already know what to do. You just have always done it for everybody else. And so that's where we're going to kind of drive the show for the rest of the next 40 minutes is you know how to do this. I know how to do LinkedIn. I just didn't know it until I had someone point out that this is just PR for a single platform. It's the same principles. And so
Yeah, I
I'd
guess the
actually
thing
like,
that I'll kind of push, maybe call out or push back on, Dustin, is
sure,
I think that LinkedIn strategies at their best are not self-promotion. That it's not look at the work
sure.
I've done, that it's not, look at the accomplishments I have, or that to your point, it is showing how you think and letting people kind of fall in love with the way you think, kind of like you more, to Jacqueline's point. And there's ways to do this that can be utterly not self-promotional, but can really help sell how you think.
And I want to clarify. I was somebody who was getting myself in the press at the age of 25, and friends said, "Hey, if you could, can you help us out?" And I said, "Sure." So what I mean is that my career as a journalist got started as a blogger,
Mm.
promoting myself, and then eventually I became a journalism career. Whereas I think so many PR people, they come right into journalism or right into PR. They've never put their own brand first. That's what I mean by self-promotional, because they're used to putting everyone else's name and brand first. But I'm glad you clarified that because you're right. If you're out there being self-promotional, that's not actually very effective. So let's come into and you already kind of said this, Jacqueline, with your anecdote, but why is LinkedIn the place to go? I mean, there's so many users, the algorithm doesn't get as much reach as it used to. Why is LinkedIn the place to go, Jacqueline, in the modern era with so many different
Are we allowed to
opportunities?
swear on this conversation?
I mean,
I'm gonna
not a
call, all right,
lot, please.
I'll call bull on the algorithm not getting as much reach as it used to. I think that that conversation gets a lot of reach, right? Every time somebody complains about that, that post blows up. I think it's bogus. My reach is greater than it's ever been. And maybe that's because I've only got 2,500 followers or whatever that is, right? But for me, LinkedIn is the place to go. We saw a mass exodus from Twitter X over the last, for 3 years, however long it's been. We've seen journalists leave that platform. We've seen thought leaders from all industries leave that platform, right? So LinkedIn was already the place where there was a lot of professionalism, a lot of job hunting, but it also absorbed a lot of the storytelling, a lot of the more personal sharing, and a lot of the kind of longer narrative format that Twitter had become for people, right? A lot of that kind of journaling. So it's really evolved in that sense. What LinkedIn is now suppressing are irrelevant posts that say, I was glad I attended this event, or things that don't offer value, right? What I'm starting to see is that posts that get people to save something, even though maybe they're not liking as much or commenting as much. If you're writing something that's so valuable that people are saving it to come back and reference later, that post is really making its way through their algorithm and getting a lot more views, right? If you're sharing something that's creating a lot of conversation, that's what's getting a lot of views, right? LinkedIn is like any other social platform where the longer you keep people looking at that post, the more LinkedIn is going to share it. They want you spending more time on the algorithm. What people are seeing is that the quality of their content is not no longer meeting the snuff of what LinkedIn was 3 years ago, sure. But now LinkedIn has evolved as a platform because they're competing in a way that they weren't a few years ago, right? They're stepping up their game because their user base has grown exponentially. They're working to earn more ad dollars. They're working to compete with the Reddits and the Facebooks and everything else. So they're not going to amplify weak, lazier posts. So we need people stepping up their game. And I think that's what we're seeing. So people who used to be able to write a certain way and get a lot of attention, it's not cutting it anymore. It's the same with media relations, which is what we've been seeing. You used to be able to do XYZ and get media coverage, not cutting it anymore. Same true of LinkedIn. And I think everybody on this call probably would agree.
Ironically, that's why I invited Noah to be on this episode is that he actually last year, the whole year, I was saying the algorithm is killing us. 12 ways to get around it, and he put up a post in the fall that proved me wrong. And to your point, Jacqueline, and Noah, I would love for you to explain the research you did and what that means.
I think you're referring to maybe less views, but more engagement.
Correct. And actually,
Okay, just yeah.
I'm going to share my screen while you're talking so everyone can see
Yeah, I mean,
some
I
of the
guess, yeah,
numbers.
as you pull that up, I guess, kind of the headline or the, in one line is that I definitely have seen my overall reach, the number of views on content I post on LinkedIn, probably on average go down, but I have not seen the people actually engaging and the amount of my ICP or my potential customers engaging go down. And so I think the problem with LinkedIn is that as in PR, we think about like, oh, we got this earned media on the Wall Street Journal. We know who the readers on Wall Street Journal are within kind of a certain profile. You got to remember that on LinkedIn, my mom is on LinkedIn, and there's people in 100 different countries on LinkedIn that range from SEO contractors to engineers to everything in between to your ICP, and so getting 100,000 views on your post doesn't mean it's 100,000 of the right people. And I have found that a much better measure than views as to, is my content resonating? Is my content providing the value that I want out of it? Is a mixture of how many likes am I getting? Who are those likes coming from? Who is commenting? And who are those comments coming from? And then how many followers am I gaining of people that are in my kind of ideal client profile, right? And so when I look back at the end of every month and say, okay, out of my so many posts that I posted last month, what worked, what resonated, what didn't, how am I tweaking my content strategy? Yes, I'm looking at, okay, what posts went viral because that's helping me understand what's going on with the algorithm. And I think a lot of the things Jacqueline just pointed out are really poignant. But I think that is a really easy vanity metric or distraction if you're just trying to get as many likes as possible. And that thinking about which of my posts actually did the CMO of Wells Fargo follow me after, right? Or where do I have conversation in the comments between potential customers that's the type of post that I want that I think is really working. And so, I had much better posts in terms of views in the first half of last year than I think I will ever have again. I'm just, I'm not seeing posts do over 100,000 views like I used to. But I am getting more value out of my posts than I was a year ago. And I think that's because, again, when 100,000 people would see my post, maybe 90,000 of them were not actually the people I was trying to get in front of. And so, can dive more into that, but that's I think something to be wary of.
And before everyone gets intimidated about big numbers like 100,000 views or having the perfect strategy, Brandon, you said before, in fact, you said it earlier today, that you're still needing to work on commenting. But yet you've had at least one panel. You have a full-time job. You're not posting to try to promote your company. You're not posting to get a client. You're doing it because you want to.
Yep.
And you even said you don't comment, which, as we'll discuss later, I think is probably 25% of success on LinkedIn is commenting on other people's content.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still getting on panels. You still had, you and Christine teased the job hires, and I didn't see your post, but I saw hers had like several dozen engagements with a simple rumors are that we may be hiring. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from being afraid to hit post to doing it every day and just the value that you've seen in just sharing the fundamentals? Because I don't want
Yeah.
everyone to get intimidated by that sort of the high level place we went to with Jacqueline and Noah. I want to make sure that we dial it back to the sort of especially the newbies who are watching right now.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, the initial reaction when you're, especially in PR and you're trying to post, you're like, I got to post about the company. I got to talk about the company and I got to say something correct about the company. That's the initial muscle is the reaction to do that. And that, I find that actually makes it harder to post because it feels forced and arbitrary and feels kind of gross, right? If you're too promotional like that. What really switched for me is just not posting about my work, but posting about how I think about my work. That is the whole transformation. And so if you look at my posts, especially the ones that have popped off, they're not promoting Storyblok. And that's intentional. I mean, I'm very anti-promotional, but in the end, I'm promoting the company. So I'm in a unique space because I'm representing a content management system. We're about building cool content. So the bar is kind of on the comms guy to build cool content on social. And if I was just promoting our white papers and just arbitrary links to webinars and things like that, I've done that and tried to play around with it basically as a teaching method to myself, where I'll have a post that gets, 200 engagements. I'll do something about Storyblok specifically, gets, 4 or 5, mainly from employees, even if it's creative. People just sense they don't want you to sell them. And we all know that. But it's amazing to see the initial reaction on your data. You see it so clearly. But if I talk about how we plan that webinar topic or that white paper report, and it's that angle, and I'm not promoting it, it pops off. People are interested because they're seeing the thinking behind something. And I have data from, my own examples where I can see the profile views and I can see the DMs that come in. So even if I'm not talking about the company, I've had podcast interview requests for myself, for the executives, like you've mentioned, panel invitations, speaking invitations, and it's coming from an account that's just being honest and entertaining and engaging, and that's the whole point. And I have no agenda to sell anything, and that's why it's selling something, frankly. And yeah, it's amazing to see that take place in real time, and it's amazing to see. I'm at about 7,000 ish followers now. You see accounts that are much bigger, but are doing that promotional stuff and getting 15 engagements, whereas I have 7,000, and every once in a while one will pop off for 500 reactions out of nowhere. And it's just amazing to see that it is all tone and realness and just having fun. I mean, they call it Weird LinkedIn for a reason. I think that is a amazing community that has popped up, and I mean, look at the results. So no, I think that's the main shift. Don't approach it thinking like a company. You got to approach it thinking as yourself and what you've learned, and the more honest, the better.
Jacqueline, Noah, anything to add there? On sort of the fundamentals of hit before you hit post?
Go for it, Jacqueline.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, reinforcing, right? I mean, it feels weird to give away things
Mhm.
for free, right? It feels weird. And it feels like you kind of want to safeguard and hold all of those things that we usually want people to pay for. But that's part of kind of what you need to do on LinkedIn. I think Brandon summed that up really well. Noah spoke to it. Thinking about ways you can give away some of those bite-sized things for free and being confident that, sure, I'm giving these things away for free, but it's because I need to show that I have the capabilities to do that. I need to show my way of thinking and having confidence that, most of the time, folks don't have the time or expertise to actually do these things, but they want to know that you can do these things, right? So the more you're comfortable with giving these things away for free and showing your thinking in a digestible way on LinkedIn, the easier it is for you to be thought of when it's time to be placing folks for a panel, when it's time to be thinking about, do we want to bring on a new consultant, right? That's when you start bubbling to the top of people's minds.
I want to point out too, again, I don't share personal stuff on Facebook, sorry, LinkedIn. Facebook is where I did a lot of, when I was a political journalist, I was very heavy on Facebook and a bit on Twitter X. I don't share much personal stuff. So to Brandon, your point, it's hard for me to sort of have that nice mix because I have 5 kids. I don't post them on LinkedIn. My wife doesn't even have social media anymore because she's very private. So it is actually a bit challenging for me because I am seeking clients. So I have to talk in a real personal way, but I can't be too personal. And so it's been an interesting challenge to put my personality out there in a way that people can read into and connect with. And so, no, I'd be very interested in how you've been able to do that because so much of what you've posted, I really think that's a nice mix of it's very connectable, but it's also always ties back to the credibility that you're trying to build for your company.
Thank you. I mean, I'll say, there's no right or wrong way to do LinkedIn. I, you know, if you talk to enough LinkedIn gurus, they'll tell you that you got to do video and you got to post selfies. And if you're on
Mhm.
LinkedIn for a day, you'll see that, and you're looking for what's doing well, you'll see that selfies tend to do really well, or pictures of your
Mhm.
dog tend to do really well. In 2 years, I've posted 2 selfies. It's just something I'm not comfortable with. And so, like, I will just tell you, like, there's no wrong way to do this. And you can do this without talking about your family vacation and posting a
Right.
picture from a restaurant. And like, it does not need to be, I think you need to show that you are a human, but that does not need to mean, pouring your personal life onto the LinkedIn feed. This was something I'll call out. Now, if that's what you want to do, that's your prerogative. But I do want to just call out that, like this can be done and this, kind of success can be achieved without turning this into your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, whatever it may be. I think that, something I'm constantly asking myself as I'm thinking about posts, as I'm thinking about the angle of posts, as I'm, coaching other people on content, is looking at posts, looking at content through the lens of, is this something that someone would either share with a colleague and say, you got to see this, or something that someone would save and say, I want to come back to this, right? Jacqueline mentioned earlier, like two of the things that are feeding into making a post go more viral and get spread are how many people press the save button or how many people press the, share send button. So those are actively feeding into the algorithm. But even more than that, I think it's a really helpful filter for whether this is content that actually adds value, right? Is, and to go back to your point, Dustin, posting, hey, look at what our company achieved. Very
Right.
unlikely someone's going to save that or send to their colleague and say, oh my God, did you see, look what Noah achieved? Whereas if you're actually teaching, if you're actually providing a unique insight, if you are, actually adding value, that is the type of content that does really well. That is the type of content that both builds your authority, but also can spread your reach. And so that's, if I were to put a post-it note on on your monitor, it would say, is this worth someone sharing?
Right. Well, and I want to dial into that a little bit too, because it's also, to Brenna's point, show how your brain works, right? Walk people down that journey so they can see themselves in your shoes, specifically your ICP, right? And we're all PR people. We all know how to tell a story. And there's so many PR people I've met who've been looking for work in the last 2 years who have all said, I don't know how to talk about what I've done. I don't want to brag, to your point, Noah. So what I've encouraged people to do is don't brag, but think through, hey, we had a press conference. Okay, what happened behind that press conference? I was talking to a lobbyist yesterday who primarily posts content about his organization. They had a meeting with the White House. They have a bill getting a vote in February that has nothing to do with immigration, budget hearing, the government shutdown, nothing to do with Venezuela or Greenland. It's an everyday fundamental issue. And what he said to me is, how do I talk about this on a fundamental issue that everyone cares about, but nobody's talking about? And I said, well, instead of saying we had a meeting at the White House, say, here are the 5 things we did to get a meeting at the White House that wasn't about Venezuela, immigration, and government shutdowns. Things that
Yeah, I
show.
mean, I'd say like for me, the most helpful framework for that to remove the, I'm nervous about bragging about what we've done and to make posts resonate better and think like the best teaching lens has been the frame of, if I were in X person's shoes trying to accomplish Y, here's what I would do, right? And those
Right.
type of posts
Yes.
have killed for me in a good way.
Yeah.
So, my top performing post of all time was one where I essentially said, I just, bootstrapped a product to $3 million. If I were starting from day one, here's how I'd get my first 100 customers and build the machine to get the next 1,000. And then it was just bullet by bullet. Here's what I would do.
Right.
Super actionable, right? At Stacker, I'm trying to get in front of PR pros. Thank you, Dustin. And probably one of the series of posts that has done really well is saying, if I were in-house PR at a brand, here is how I would prove to the executive team that I should own GEO or AI search, right? Because there's this land grab. Everyone in PR is trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I at least have a seat at the table? And I've actually never done that even, but I have a thought on it because I'm in this space.
Right.
And those posts of saying, here's what I would do are super actionable. They remove the, hey, look what I accomplished, but they put that, anyone who that resonates with is going to say, okay, I want to see this. And if the advice is good, the post is going to fly.
Yeah, I would just say there's a reason we need that insight from Noah. And I mean, I've known about Noah's content for a long time. It's fascinating, right? He pops up in my feed constantly. So it's obviously working, but it's working for the reason he described. And the reason I want to emphasize that is this exercise of starting to hire 2 new PR pros. Last time I did it was 2 years ago. So it's been a while. And you think 2 years, people should be on board with LinkedIn, right? This is not a new thing. It's not a new thing. But already, before I even open up the job descriptions, just people expressing interest, I'm immediately looking at their profiles and I'm not naming names, obviously, but I'd say 95% of them are disappointing. I mean, their last post is 4 months ago. They reposted a company update from their company. Like nothing from them, no personality, the typical CV copy and paste into the about section. And you're just thinking, you're being hired to do this for your execs in the company, and immediately I have a bad taste in my mouth. Probably amazing people, great professionals, done everything, but that filter, just like Noah said, the people that are consciously filtering through people's presence and the people who are unconsciously consciously filtering through, it just really does kind of switch off in your brain when you see, okay, it's 2026 and you don't have anything, you don't have any featured posts where you got like 20 likes on your perspective. Like before I decide to have a conversation with you, I want a quick download on how you think and how you communicate and what's interesting to you. And that's what LinkedIn is so great for, especially that featured section. I mean, it's not just for posts that go crazy. It can be your favorite post, the way you think. And I tell you, if you're looking for a job right now or even clients, that's what you need to highlight, because I mean that is the judgment call. It's almost a yes and no right away from that these days. And it didn't used to be, but again, I'm hiring two people, so I can tell you from experience, it's just as bad as it was 2 years ago. I don't know what's going on. This is why we need to keep having these encouragement sessions. It's going to be okay. You can post. It's not going to hurt you, because people need to hear it, and it's not optional now. I mean, one of the things we're doing at Storyblok, and I'm taking my team, is we're doing more owned publishing, right? We're going to be like a media brand ourselves. And so if I'm hiring people, it needs to show that they can do that, that they can be their own voice. So it's critical.
Jacqueline, if you could dial into something, Scott Black asked, he said, I'm hearing a lot of conflicting advice on the impact of posting frequency and how that impacts reach. One camp says post every day, others say you're over posting. He said, I err on the side of quality over quantity, but my reach seems minuscule. I'd like your advice on that, not only just in terms of the number of times. I would say probably a default of maybe twice a week if you're trying to actually have an impact on your audience. But I'd also like you to touch, Jacqueline, because we're going to move into that. You're going to launch us into the next stage of the conversation. Is what are the other things you should be doing besides just posting in
Mm.
order to create the community and create the relationships and that credibility on LinkedIn?
Mhm. Yeah, especially talking to folks here who might be beginners, I think a great place to start is once a week, right? Once a week shows consistent activity. It kind of lets the LinkedIn algorithm, which it's so weird to talk about that as some sort of aware entity, but it is at this point, I suppose, right? It's an expected cadence. I feel like if I had to make a guess at how things are working, it feels like that's significantly more important than how often you're posting is more of an expected cadence. It seems to me like when I have clients that post consistently, go dark, and then post a lot again, I notice that they suffer quite a bit from those dark times. So I would go with more what's easy for you to keep up with. My recommendation to clients is once a week. Let's get you on a once a week cadence. If you can do twice a week, that's what I personally opt for, is I think if I can get two quality posts out the door a week. I feel like if I'm posting more than that, my quality does personally, right? This for me, my quality does start to decrease, and I start to see a little bit of cannibalization of my engagement and content. Don't I can't authoritatively say that that's how it works for everybody. This is what I've noticed for me. I opt for twice a week. I would love to see everybody once a week. Go once a week, keep it earlier in the week. And other things that you can be doing, Brandon talked about commenting. Um, and like, don't comment just like, "Hey, great post, loved it." Like, your comments should be a way for you to network. Like, this is a critical,
There you go.
like,
Yes.
we can't be looking at comments as like, how do I how do I get myself in front of these people? These should be like goodwill things that you are doing for other people. When you're cheering on people authentically, when you are taking a moment to expand your knowledge by learning from other people who have really great things to say in industries that you are interested in, whether they're public relations or if you're a tech PR, if you're a government PR, like whatever it is, you should be using LinkedIn to expand your knowledge as well. and actively building relationships authentically. People can sense right through when you're doing it because you're trying to get something out of them. Use
Or
this
hit a quota. Yeah.
100%. Use this
Yeah.
as a way to stay in touch with people who should just be hearing from you once a month, right? Like that is the beauty of this platform as well, is you are keeping your relationships alive and fresh so that one day when you maybe do truly need something from somebody or you want to ask for a business reference, when you reach out to this person, it's not, "Hey, I know you haven't heard from me in a year." No, it's that you gave great feedback on an article they wrote. You have been promoting their work. You have been celebrating their most recent accomplishment, right? That's what the comments are for, not for you to kind of be a tire kicker, right? Only when it's beneficial to you. So that's when I encourage comments, is when they're actually a real meaningful part of maintaining connection, of building knowledge, of supporting community. Like that's what this platform should be about. And I really encourage people to use that as an authentic, God, authentic is used so much, but like use that as an authentic way to keep in touch with your network, to support and to love on your network. That is what's going to pay dividends, not only in your views, your connections, all of that, but like when you need to build that business, when you need to ask somebody for something down the road, that's what your comments are for. So that should answer the two parts there.
And
Take kind of
Noah,
a alternate. Yeah, I'm gonna take an alternate take. I mean, I agree with Jacqueline in that once a week is definitely better than zero times, and twice a week is better than once a week. Uh, but I would say that if you want to get good at this, you need to be posting every day.
Yeah.
That if you're not posting on LinkedIn, no offense, you probably suck at posting on LinkedIn. I definitely did 2 years ago. And the reality is, if someone, was asking you how, if I want to get better, if I want to be good at piano, should I post once a week or, 12 times a week? I would say, well, how good at piano do you want to get? And so the reality is, like, you're not going to be good at posting on LinkedIn. Everyone's going to leave this webinar and go post on LinkedIn tomorrow, and they're going to
right.
say, well, I didn't get anything out of it. Should I keep doing it? And the reality is, like, if you want to take this seriously, which, to kind of Brandon's anecdote at the beginning, hopefully you want to take this seriously. I think you need to be posting at least once a day. And the reality is because at the end of the month, you're going to look back at all of your posts and you're going to see what worked, what topics resonated, what hooks worked, how did, and if you posted once a week, you're going to have 4 posts and you're going to say, okay, like I can't really learn much. If you post it every day, you're going to have 20, 25 posts and you're going to learn a lot more. You're going to learn faster for the second month and the third month, and that's going to compound. And so I would say if you want to get good at this, you need to be posting, it's up to you. Look, like when I first started doing this, I said I'm going to post at least 4 times a week. Then it started to get fun and I started to post 6 times a week. And now there's some days where I post 3 times in a day. There's other days where I don't post at all. I think it needs to feel natural to you. But I do think if you want to get good at this, I have not necessarily personally seen diminishing returns on posting quote unquote too much. I'll post 3 times. Sometimes the third one will blow up. Other times the third one will do nothing. And so, I think it has to do more with how good the content is and whether it resonated with people than how many times you've posted. I'll also say that the LinkedIn algorithm is really good at showing content to people that care about that. So you can post a content for one audience and then post a second post for a different audience, and LinkedIn will show those to 2 different people. It's not like everyone's going to all of a sudden see 2 of your posts. And so I guess that's my take on what is too much or what is enough. For Jacqueline's take on comments, could not agree more. It's such an incredible way to kind of keep relationships warm, keep your keep your name in the picture. The other thing I'd add is if you are uncomfortable posting, commenting is a really, really, really good substitute, because people hang out in the comments on posts where there are lots of comments, and comments are a great way of showing how you think. Someone posts an article and there's a debate about the topic. Not if you comment great post or love this take, then you might as well just delete your LinkedIn account, because those are annoying and they're not adding any value. But if you
Noah,
actually
tell us
are
how you
saying,
really feel about everything. Please stop holding back.
but I think comments can be a much lower stakes way for a lot of people to get 80% of the same value out of LinkedIn. They also can be great fodder for inspiration for posts. I'd say a third of the posts that I write come from me commenting on something and saying, oh, that's kind of a unique or interesting take I had. Maybe I'll write a post out of that.
100%.
But you got to remember that when you comment, your comment a lot of the times will show up in your connections feeds. So
Right.
commenting is basically like posting, right? Because what you wrote shows up in your connections feeds in that conversation. And so I think it's for a lot of people it can be a lower stakes way to get into this and to hopefully say some real stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say I am, even though I'm a twice a week poster, I am a like 10 to 15 comments a day girly. Like I'm in the comments like it's my job. So yeah, I fully agree. Like the more, and Noah is 1,000% right. Like the more you write and practice, the better you're gonna get, right? I'm coming from a place where like, hey, I feel good about my writing, I feel good about my cadence, this is right for me. And everybody's gonna come to their own landing about, okay, what's good for my cadence, what's bringing me in enough leads, right? I think Dustin, you said you're posting every day or multiple times a day too, right? So
6 times a week. Yeah,
yeah,
correct.
unreal. I couldn't, I couldn't. Like
Well,
I don't have, there's not
I
enough up
cheat.
here.
I cheat, and I'm actually going to share my screen because Bridget asked a question here. Thoughts on posting insights about companies you might be targeting for employment. And so I'm actually going to share my screen. It relates to the insight we got from Noah, actually. So I'll be also promoting Noah here. In 2025, my company grew 75% in sales. And when I say it was almost all of it from LinkedIn, it was like 98% came through LinkedIn. And again, 2 years ago, no one in comms knew who I was. I knew like 20 people organically. I've added, I've added something like 5,000 connections in the industry in the last 2 years. I didn't know, Jacqueline didn't know who I was a year ago. Brandon didn't know who I was 2 years ago. And I think Noah and I got connected because I saw his post and commented on it. That's how we ended up talking today. But I want to just not, I'm not just here to show like, hey, we have this growth, but this is what we actually did on the tactics. And these are universal tactics. And I want to just point to what Jacqueline and Noah have said, that I encourage posting as much as you can where you feel like you're not straining yourself when you're first starting. But I also want to point out that when I was in my 20s, I thought most of putting on muscle was lifting weights. Later, after a few injuries, and I was talking to some people who actually knew what they were talking about, I realized lifting weights is only 20% of putting on muscle. You also need to sleep well, nutrition, hydration, rest. That's 80% of it. Similarly for LinkedIn, if you're somebody who's not yet ready to make a whole post, right? So first of all, make sure you stick whatever you're saying, whether it's comments or posts, be disciplined. Don't get distracted by puppy pictures or the newest topic of the day, because that will be a distraction until you know how you want to talk about that topic within your overall narrative. I schedule posts all the time. To Jacqueline, to your point, I probably have 50% of my posts are scheduled and then repurposed. And Brandon, I'd like you to talk about how you've done that tactic as well.
Oh yeah.
It saves so much mental energy and time. Um, I also engage on 15 people's content every day. In fact, I have a whole a link here, my LinkedIn engagement list. It has over 200 people that I'm trying to engage with once a week, maybe every other week, to create that community. If you're a shy person, just read the post and say, great post. Here's how I've used that tactic. Or, those are 6 great tactics. Here's a 7th tactic that you didn't mention that would really tag onto that. I'm a more contrary person, so I will say, hey, have you thought about this component or that component? And though I'm challenging the person, but in a respectful fashion, go be social. To Jacqueline's point, this is a social media platform. This is a virtual coffee house. Find the people you want to hang out with and do it a lot. And also max out your connections. You must do that, or your comments, people are not going to be as proactive as you want them to be. So make sure you're proactive on your posts, when you comment, and also in creating those relationships through direct messaging and building out new connections. Did I miss anything here on the sort of the key tactics, Jacqueline, Noah? And this post, by the way, is linked in the conversation today, so feel free to steal it and use it. Did I miss anything in the key tactics?
I genuinely only, like, I have to love what I'm talking about. I've noticed when I talk about something that I'm not personally super crazy about, that just really comes through and it never does well. Like I have to be like, oh, hell yeah, this is awesome, right? And that's what,
Sure.
to steal terms from you and Brandon, that's what pops off.
Yeah, and speaking, you mentioned Dustin about consistency. I do agree with Noah on when I started posting daily, things really changed and accelerated. I'm a 7 day a week poster, and just take that with the caveat because I'm not writing original content for every one of those posts. I do try to write Monday through Friday as much as possible original content, but I've been doing this long enough that I go back. I literally just go back 6, 7 months and recycle evergreen content. A lot of what I post is just evergreen, timeless stuff. It's not tied to a specific event or timeline. I do post about that, but I won't recycle those posts. Obviously, I'm not talking about something that's a year old. But I purposely try to phrase things in a way that it's like almost timeless so that I can continue to get value out of it. So, for instance, last week I was in Amsterdam. We had our go to market kickoff. I didn't write one post that week, but I published 7 days a week. And I'm just literally going back and copying and pasting stuff, and it's succeeding better than it did 6 months ago. And people didn't see it. And if the people saw it again, so what? I mean, there's some in our space that
Brandon,
I
are
see
you rewriting it or are you literally just copying and pasting?
literally copying and pasting. Yep,
Wow.
and it
Okay. I've always
works.
had thoughts that maybe it like is recognizing duplicate content, but
It
you're
does.
telling.
Well, I think it might if it's within a certain time period, but I'm doing 6 months and more, so I don't think it's
Okay.
penalizing me for that. And I'm seeing increased engagement. The bigger I get, the more those posts resonate. There's one that went off crazy for almost 2,000 reactions. I posted that thing 6 months later. It went for about like 900. So not as good, but still good. Now, the first time I posted that, the one that spiked to 2,000, it got like 30 reactions.
I
So you're
remember
starting
that
to
one.
see a
We
step.
talked about this.
Yeah, you're starting
Yeah.
to see it step up, but this is why I can literally never post again or never have an original thought in my life, which I hope I have an original thought for the rest of my life. But I don't need to have an original thought because I have so much in there that I could literally just repurpose timeless content every 6 months or so. And it's incredible. That really takes the pressure off. For instance, today I'm mentally exhausted, so there's no way I'm going to post something fresh. You're going to see a post from me though, and it's going to be recycled from 6 months ago. No one cares, and if they saw it before, they see it again. So I've seen no downside to doing that.
Mhm. We've got about 10 minutes left here. Folks, I'm going to go through the comments. A lot of them have come in, so let me just see if we can pop up a question or two here. A lot of people are asking about their different verticals or their different goals, but I kind of want to stay more general here because I do think the tactics we're talking about, whether it's the timing, Noah, that you brought into the comments a couple of minutes ago, I think these tactics are pretty universal. It's simply a matter of the communications professional wanting to build that brand to think through what is their goal? Do they want a client? Do they want a job? Do they just want to have fun? What is their goal? Who is their target audience? And what does that target audience want to see that you can uniquely say? Did I miss anything on sort of that fundamental approach? I don't think it gets much more complicated than that in terms of the posting or in terms of what you kind of comments you should be making on other people's posts.
In terms of tactics
Yeah,
or
because people are asking in the comments about their specific industries, and I don't want to get that deep, but I do want to make sure
Mhm.
people have that key takeaway of no matter where I'm at, I can spend that time on LinkedIn. And I want to clarify also, I spend about an hour a day on LinkedIn. I do not live here, but I still do 15 to 15 comments a day on other people's comments and post 6 days a week. And I do it all in about an hour a day. So I don't have to spend all day here taking for the rest of my life.
I'm misunderstanding the question.
What
yeah,
are the key
sorry, I'm not
tactics?
sure.
What are the key tactics that anyone can take away whether no matter what industry they're in? I want to make sure that people who are asking about their specific challenge or their specific industry, we're not going to be able to answer that question in the next 8 minutes, but I want to make sure that they're able to walk away with, okay, these are the key points here, and I can make that application because I'm an intelligent PR person.
I think Noah's point needs underscoring, which is like you're not going to get better if you don't do it. I think that's probably the biggest piece is you have to jump in and just start doing it and figuring out what's doing well and what's tanking. So that was probably my favorite point that's been made today is you're not going to get better and you're not going to know what works if you don't just jump in and start. So that's what I would underscore. I'd talk about Brandon's piece. I would point very heavily to what he discussed in terms of showcasing your skill set and way of thinking versus highlighting just your company, right? Just talking about, hey, here's my cool company. Nobody wants to hear about that. And I think we can take all of the best practices from media relations and really apply that to LinkedIn, right? You can't pitch a journalist and say, hi, here's my company and my website. Can you please write a story about this? Not going to work. We all know this. So take those same principles and apply it to LinkedIn and what you talk about. But those were my two favorite kind of tactics and takeaways from what we discussed today.
Nice. I guess, yeah, outside of what's been discussed, if I had tactical takeaways, the first would just be like, you need to try things and again, see what works. So like, if you're going to do this, don't just look, hey, how did my post do yesterday? But at the end of the month, go back and see like what topics are resonating with my customers. What worked in my writing, what didn't. Again, like if you're the idea of, oh my God, what am I going to say every day if I'm doing this 3 or 4 times a week? Like the worst thing that can happen is no one reads your post. And no one will know besides you that no one reads your post because guess what? No one looks at a LinkedIn post and says like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. They only got 7 likes because they didn't see that post. So you need to get over that. But like with that said, don't say anything where the next day you feel cringe of like, oh, that's super awkward that I said that, right? Because this is your personal brand. And I think I have seen people to go chase virality, chase likes, kind of get on this train. And then they start saying stuff where it's like, well, remember, like this is your professional brand. This isn't your Instagram feed. So the first thing I would say is try things, see what works. The second kind of takeaway I would give for people is I cannot understate how much the hook matters. And by the hook, I mean the first 2 or 3 lines of what shows up before someone clicks that more button. You can have a really, really good idea, but if those first 2 lines aren't convincing someone that they should read the post, then it doesn't matter how good your idea was. Because you got to remember, no one's just looking at your post. They're scrolling through the feed on their phone or on their desktop. They're seeing a bunch of stuff and you need someone to stop. That is why selfies work, is because we're humans and we stop. So if you are writing, you need to spend just as much time on the first 2 lines as on the rest of the post. And that really can make or break whether your post gets seen by 100 people or 1,000 people. Would kind of be my 2 takeaways or, extra takeaways.
Yeah.
Right.
The hook is so critical. I mean, I love when I just have a random thought for a hook and I'll justify a whole post based on the hook, but it's always worth it if it's good enough. And it's a really interesting writing exercise. The just one thing I'll just recommend that we haven't talked about yet is hardest part is figuring out what to say. It's not even how you say it. It's like, what am I going to write about? I just have a really ugly text document on my computer, and I literally just anything that interesting that happens in the day or an observation or an email I saw, and like that was weird. And like I had someone cold call me and ask for a meeting at 1 a.m. and I was like, perfect, that's a LinkedIn post.
I saw that one from you.
And I was like, not 1 a.m., but 1:05, I'm available. And it's a 2-line post, but I've used it 3 times, and it goes crazy every single time. At least moderately crazy. But my point being, I have a list of I think it's up to like 563 observations, and they're literally 3 or 4 words. And I'll just scroll through and just kind of recategorize them in order of what's most interesting to me this week. And that's my source of inspiration. Sometimes those posts are 3 sentences, sometimes they're 200 words. Who cares? But they're fast to write. And that's that idea generation doesn't have to be complex and you have Notion databases and frameworks to plan your social media. I literally just have a text document, and that's what I've been doing for 2 years, and it's worked. So maybe that'll work for others too.
I envy you, Brandon. Between the show, a newsletter, and everything else, there's literally in our weekly biz dev call, which is largely focused around LinkedIn because where we drive most of our business. Our sales manager has a line, a reminder. There is no more room for more LinkedIn posts unless it speaks to you, is amazing, or is really, really important. It's literally a reminder every week because my posts don't get great engagement. My average probably gets 15 or 20. But that's okay because it's the right people. My post this morning only has 6 engagements, and I'm one of them. But 2 of the people who liked it are people who are decision makers at target companies that we want to do business with. And
Yeah,
so
the
again,
thing that I'll just, oh, sorry, Dustin.
no. Go ahead. No, there was another thought I
I
had,
was
but
going to
it
say, like,
escaped.
if there's one metric, beyond the engagement metrics we've talked about that I would tell people to gauge the value or kind of the impact of their post, it's going into the view analytics after you've posted and seeing how many followers you added.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
if someone follows you, that means they found so much
Mhm.
value in your post that they said,
Right.
I want to know every time this person posts again. And then, the next level is go to your recent followers and see if those are the types of people you want following you, right? And
Well,
those are the types
yes.
of posts that if someone's following you, that is clearly resonating with people. And, yes, you need people to see the post, you need impressions to,
Mhm.
have people see you and follow you, but that's been for me the guiding metric is trying to grow my followers because A, that is telling me what content is really resonating with people and providing value. And B, you're growing an audience and more people will see your posts if you have more followers.
And I'm going to close. I said earlier that a lot of, we started this program in March with Brendan and another guest on helping PR people come out of the shadows. We did it again in July, and we're doing it for the third time now with Jacqueline and Noah added in here. And the thing that it took a long time for me to realize is so many PR people I spoke with, people, senior executives in the comm space were saying, I'm looking for a job, Dustin, but I'm not sure what to say. And I was like, in my head going, you're in communications. It shouldn't be that hard. But it's because PR people, whether they came up as journalists or straight up as PR, they're used to putting everyone else first, not having to think about their own brand. And so I said earlier, I kind of cheated. I got my start in media as a blogger, as somebody who was pitching other outlets rather than starting my own. But I do want to share that when I went from political journalism and political commentating to running my own company, I had no idea what to talk about. And I decided to cold email a few people one day for a piece I was writing. And Mark Cuban got back to me. Mark Cuban gave me 47 words from 7 questions. That's only 6.5 words per answer. I turned it into a 450-word article. And my father, who's my business partner, looked at me and said, how the bleep did you get an interview with Mark Cuban? I said, I don't know, you know them. Well, not only is leading with that line, you miss every shot you don't take, my best post of the last couple of months and put it up over the weekend. But second, that got us thinking as we were thinking about how to brand the company, what can Dustin write on? I was like, I don't know. I don't know anything. And my father encouraged me, to Brandon's point, Dustin, write things down throughout the day as they come to you. Once a week, sit down and organize them into the best things that most resonated, and that still resonate with you. That might be 10%, but those are the best ones. Come fast forward a couple of years, I was writing on business topics for a column that ended up at Forbes. And my sales mentor said, stop writing about this topic and that topic. So they're getting into Forbes. What's your issue? And she said, yeah, but you're a media relations guy. You're talking about budgeting or operations. That's great, but you don't have the knowledge base to dive deep and actually make an impact. I didn't think there was enough to talk about media relations once a month in a column. Now I do it every day on LinkedIn. So I want to encourage you, if you're thinking about coming out of the shadows and you're not sure you have enough to say, to Brandon's point, write down your ideas as you're going throughout the day. Put them on your notes on your phone, hand write it out. And if it sticks with you the next day, write something on it because it means it resonated long enough that it probably matters to people like you. And again, I'm somebody who has lots of opinions. My college professors didn't like it. My father didn't like it when I was a teenager. And I struggled with that. So don't let that be a barrier to hitting post that first time, the 10th time, the 20th time, because to Noah's point, you have to gather that data. Once you've done that, then create that virtual coffee house that Jacqueline and I were talking about. Go around, find the people that think like you, yeah. And no, I know you have to hop. Thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us,
Thank
man.
you all.
And
Thank
so,
you.
sorry, I'm over talking. As I said, this is a challenge since birth. But basically, don't let that be a barrier. Post 1 to 3 days a week for a month. Then throw commenting in on other people's stuff. Then learn the algorithm. Take your time, but hit post. Comment other people's stuff and recognize that you're not alone and you have more knowledge to share than you think. So I know that was like a 7-minute soliloquy, but I'll let Jacqueline and Brendan close out with anything else you want to add.
I love waxing poetic, so you did lovely.
Yeah, no notes, Dustin, no notes.
Well, look, folks, we're gonna have to jump here, but thank you for watching. I hope we've answered a lot of your questions. If you have any more, make sure you tag Jacqueline, Brendan, Noah, or myself in the comments here, and we'll see you in a few months when we do this again. Thanks a lot, and Jacqueline and Brendan, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.